Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thanks for stopping by. Today I'm going to be making a video based off of an Instagram poll I actually did. So I was like, what should my next video be? And one of those options I put up was ways to go herping. So that's what this video is going to be about today. And if you've never heard that word before, don't worry, it's nothing weird. So let's get into it. So in this video, I'm going to discuss 5 popular ways to go herping to find very cool reptiles and amphibians. So coming up with the best ways to actually find reptiles and amphibians has been a challenging part of both biological research and field work, along with just herping for fun. So what is herping anyway? Herping is just a word for finding reptiles and amphibians, and that word actually comes from herpetology, which is the biological branch that studies reptiles and amphibians. So you're probably going to hear that word often on this channel. So there it is. It's a different sounding word, I suppose, but it is what it is. So when you go herping, especially if you're a part of a biological team, you definitely want to think about what are you looking for specifically. Is it a certain reptile, certain amphibian? You have to look into their behaviors, their habitats, and overall their lifestyles. So each method that I'm going to talk about today does have its positives and negatives, but there isn't one that's really deemed the correct way. It all depends on your area, the animal, really just the time, the moment, the day, and so on. So all of these methods have positives and negatives, and in my opinion, the more the merrier, and the better success rate you will have in finding some really cool animals. So get out there, explore, and I'm gonna go over these methods today. Now, disclaimer, when you're looking for a specific species or you're going on public lands or in parks, you always wanna be aware of the laws and regulations of that area and on that species. So I always encourage you to look that up. Always wanna look into the rules, regulations, and laws of both your state, your local area, and also the species, because some species are protected federally. You can't touch them, and in some areas you'll be trespassing, so we definitely don't want to get in trouble herping. We want to keep herping as much as possible to have a good reputation, and we don't want anybody to get in trouble for this type of thing. So always keep that in mind, that you may need special permits to be able to look in certain areas, and this is more targeted at people who are biologists or a part of a team. A lot of permitting goes along with being able to explore these areas. But if it's in your own backyard, it's a little bit different sometimes, but always be aware of the rules, regulations, and the laws, because nobody wants to get caught up or be in trouble for this type of thing. Along with understanding your local, state, federal laws on the species and areas, parks, and things like that, you definitely want to be aware of any other animals in the area you may come across that could be dangerous, specifically venomous reptiles when you're out herping. So just be aware. A field guide would really help you with this type of thing. One of my mentors and professors, Professor Holbrook, he just published a field guide to help you herp, and the girl's in it, so grab yourself a copy. You can get it from Amazon, and it's really going to be helpful for talking about methods like this. And if you're really serious about herping and you develop a passion for it, or you're a aspiring herpetologist or biologist, I definitely recommend that you check that out. So based on published research and also my personal experience, these methods have proven to be successful for herping, finding some really cool reptiles and amphibians, and I'm gonna just talk about that. So while these methods are useful for professional practices in biology and being in the field, it's also just a really fun activity you could do with your family, a fun date night, or really just by yourself. So I hope that you get out there and explore the areas that are around you and find some really cool animals. So if you're really looking for a specific animal that you love, you got to think about the species-specific behaviors, species-specific diet, species-specific habitats. Think about all these things because it's important and it's going to help you find them. Now, on a side note, herping comes along with a lot of failures and not finding things. So this will be a part of it, but I know that if you just keep getting out there, trying different methods, you are bound to find some really cool stuff. And I just know that. These animals can be the hardest to find. They have elusive personalities, reptiles and amphibians usually, so don't give up. You will find them eventually. So the first method that I'm going to talk about is aquatic trapping. So this is more suited for semi-aquatic reptiles and amphibians, but you can also find other animals this way, like fish, invertebrates, things like that. So the aquatic traps that I've used before are called gi traps, and you have large gi traps and small gi traps. So they're basically shaped, they're like an elongated shaped basket type of thing that have funnels on each side so an animal can go in but cannot get out. Now, when I was using these in school as a biologist doing studies, you have to put them in shallow areas and leaving half of it above the water. So you want to put it in a shallow area where there is air available, because a lot of these animals do require air as well, but if they don't, they could be submerged all the way too. And with these trappings, you need to know your laws, know your permits, get permission, and also you need to check them every 24 hours. You don't want to leave anything struggling in case something crazy happens, which when you field herp, something crazy is bound to happen. It's just fact. So using this method, I've come across really amazing animals like invertebrates, amphibians like newts and salamanders, and we even found a water snake this way as well. When I was in college, I was partnered with a professor and some other students while we were looking for a specific snake species in Florida. This was a semi-aquatic animal, so we did use these traps, and although we didn't find our target species, we did find one water snake, which was really cool because we were looking for a snake. It wasn't this species, but it showed us that this method can be successful for water snakes and reptiles. So, funny story, although I have had a lot of success with the small gi traps, large gi traps, when we used them, the next morning we came, they were completely eaten. Alligator had actually chomped through it, and it's like butter to an alligator. So this is something you can't really predict to happen. This is a possibility. Your materials could be damaged and you could come across a very large reptile that's going to eat through your traps. So this is always a possibility. Always be aware of your surroundings and be safe. The next method for finding reptiles and amphibians is called road cruising. This is probably the most popular and easiest way to find reptiles and amphibians. So what we do down here in Florida, a lot of people do this, and you can do this as a scientist, as a person, as a fun adventure, field trip, something like that. Anybody, literally anybody can do this. So what we do down in Florida, we go to Everglades National Park, or you can look on Google Maps and find an area that looks like it's a good habitat for reptiles and amphibians, and there's a road through it. So what you do is go at the right time. We really call this like the witching hour, and this is usually around dusk when the reptiles and amphibians are coming out. So they're coming out and they're laying on the road. And this makes sense because all day the sun is blazing on the road usually, and at night they get cold. So they come out to the road to get warm. And this is kind of a double-edged sword because a lot of them get hit by cars and killed this way, but it's also giving them heat. So they take the risk, I guess. This is really a classic way to go herping, and it's really fun and minimal effort, and I really like this method. But take it slow. These animals depend on it. Again, so many of them die in this way because people are speeding through these areas. Again, always be aware of your local state laws when it comes to touching animals and where you're at. The way that you road cruise is you drive slowly with your brights on and you kind of just scan the road. You're gonna get better at this over time. I'm still not even the best at it, and a lot of the times you're gonna stop, pull over, get out, and realize it's just a stick or a piece of something random on the road. So this is really common. Don't feel bad, and it's just a part of the fun. So over time you'll get a lot better at this, but take it slow. You'll start to be able to recognize a turtle or a snake or a frog, and it's really, really cool. So keep it up, and over time you'll be able to do it better. Road surveying is really a quick, fun, and easy way to go and study reptiles and amphibians almost anywhere. The next method I'd like to talk about is simple foot hiking. So it's exactly what it sounds like. You get out there, you hike around, and you see what you can find. So in my personal experience working with Professor Chesness and Holbrook, we were looking for a specific marsh snake. So the salt marsh snake, mangrove salt marsh snake. And they really liked a habitat that was not accessible by road. We had to go into their habitat at night because they are a nocturnal animal, and hike around the edges of the mangroves. So this is the typical edge habitat that we were looking for during our specific study, and this area is very influenced by tide. So right now in this video is high tide, but low tide it's a little bit more shallow, and the snakes actually hang out in all of those mangrove properties. We were hiking through these areas and grabbing the snakes by hand so we could take data on them, their measurements and things like that. So foot hiking is another way that you can find a variety of reptiles and amphibians, but again, just be aware of your surroundings, be aware of what could be a potential danger to you, and always have your permits on you or whatever you may need, just in case something crazy happens. This is a common way that herpetological research is done, just by foot hiking to find these animals, because again, many reptiles and amphibians are very elusive. So that just means they don't really want to be found, and this is just a way they've been for a long time. So what I really love about this method is you're going into their natural habitat. You get the opportunity to maybe see them behaving naturally and witnessing some really cool interactions. It gives a more real experience for the herper, in my opinion, but this is the most committed method. There have been nights that I've been out the entire night. So entire nights that we've been out there hiking dense mangrove marshy habitats in shorts and dive boots, of course. So you definitely have to think about the gear that you have to wear, and we have headlamps and flashlights, so it's not the easiest way, but super fun. There's nights that we've been out there and I lose the shoe. There's been nights out there where you just get demolished by bugs and mosquitoes and you're tired and you smell bad and you just want the night to be over. So especially when you're working, you're gonna come across nights like this. But again, you look back and you're like, it was still pretty cool. The other methods really don't provide the natural atmosphere of this method. Really important part of herpetology, and it's really a way that you can truly admire, respect, and observe an animal, a reptile or amphibian, in its natural habitat. Next method I'm talking about is called dip netting. It's also exactly what it sounds like. You take a big net that's kind of like a butterfly net, and you use this in areas like ponds or shallow lakes and things like that. So that is the experience I had with it during school. So we were surveying different ponds around natural areas in Florida. Again, we were looking for a target species, so this was one method we were trying. Dip netting is really for the amphibian enthusiast, in my opinion, because these areas are usually richer in amphibians than reptiles because it's almost fully aquatic. It's a lot deeper water you're using this method with, but it could be used for other groups of animals as well, like fish, invertebrates, and maybe other reptiles like turtles. Since amphibians go through such an amazing transition, this is a really cool method to potentially witness that. In my personal experience, when we were dip netting, we did come across some really cool tadpoles in a lot of different stages. So there were different species of tadpoles that were in different stages of their life cycles, and it was really cool to observe that. I would love to make a video on this topic that kind of stems from this. We were doing surveys in ephemeral ponds, and that's just a fancy word for ponds that have no fish. So we were dip netting in fishless ponds, and then we would dip net in fish ponds, ponds that had fish in them, and we were comparing it for amphibian diversity. So think about it. When there's no fish, there is nothing to eat tadpoles. So this is a really big bonus for amphibians. In Florida, these ephemeral ponds are usually dry in the winter time. So in the dry season, they dry up, the soil will be wet, but during the summer, they fill up to be an actual pond. So hopefully you can hear me over this beautiful sound, but here we have an ephemeral pond that is in between cypress trees as well as pond apple trees. So this is actually a depression in the ground Florida has microtopography, so this is what really creates our wetlands. This soil is wet all year, but dry in the dry season, and it fills up to be a pond. Fish can't live here for the entire year because eventually it's going to dry down. This habitat is really a key way to learn about the amphibian diversity: toads, frogs, salamanders, newts, other amphibians like that. While personally it has not provided a reptile, I'm sure that this method could possibly provide you with reptiles like turtles and maybe even water snakes. So along with just having fun herping, this method is also used for scientific research, and it can be really helpful. So get out there if you can, and again, always check your local state laws and laws on any species you encounter. The last method I'm going to talk about today, the popular way to go herp, is called pitfall trapping. So it's kind of like what it sounds like, but let me explain. So pitfall traps are set up with a drift fence, which is basically like a tarp, and then wooden sticks or pegs that go into the ground, and buckets. So try to visualize this with me. I'll try to put some pictures up, but you have the fence part, and these pegs into the ground, more fence, pegs into the ground, and then in between these fences and pegs, you have buckets that are dug completely into the ground. So when you're not using them, you have a lid tight on the bucket so no animals will be falling in. But think about it, if animals are coming across this area, they can't pass through. So they all kind of congregate until they get to that bucket, and then they fall in. So again, with this method, you have to check it every single day. You have to be committed. You can't leave things in there because their lives are really depending on it. So inside these buckets, we always have a sponge in case the animal needs water, so it always has to be wet. We have a PVC pipe that could be used to float on in case it rains and gets flooded out. And these are really important so the animal can stay alive, stay healthy until you come back to check for it. So these pitfall traps are really helpful in like state parks, or even if you live large property, it could be a cool way to see what's in the area. I've found so many invertebrates this way that we even had a tortoise fall in one of our buckets one time. Lots of land crabs, giant stick bugs, giant centipedes, stuff like that. So terrestrial pitfall trapping is used for a variety of animals in natural areas to kind of survey for what's around. These pitfall traps are typically pretty large, so you do require a good amount of materials. During my experience, they were actually already set up, so I didn't get the experience of installing the pitfall traps, but thank you to whoever did that, and I got to go and check them frequently. Really funny and amazing story that is really a highlight of my life, honestly, because of this. There was one day that me and my partner during school, we were going to check the pitfall traps, and this day was pouring down rain in the summer. You know, Florida, it's the wet season, it's the summer. And it was pouring down rain. Our pitfall traps were set up deep inside of a forest, and so we were going there. We're like, let's just get this done as fast as possible, take the data and leave, check everything, you know. It was pouring down rain. The mosquitoes were swarming me so bad. My partner, who, Jack Foot, he was like swatting them off me. My arm was black from all the mosquitoes. It was so horrible. But when we finally got to the pitfall traps, it was all worth it. There was an explosion of spadefoot toads. Now, spadefoot toads are incredibly gorgeous amphibians that actually spend most of their life underground. So they only come out when they eat and when they breed. So during this downpour, they were actually using it to breed. So our pitfall traps were filled with spadefoot toads. They were just jumping around everywhere. It was incredible. It was really amazing to actually get to witness this animal in its natural habitat and doing natural behavior like mating. It was really a privilege, and I'm just like over the moon every time I think about this experience. So this method is used in a variety of different biological studies, but again, it could also be used by someone who's just passionate about reptiles and amphibians, someone who wants to just adventure and go herp, and somebody who wants to figure out the diversity in their own backyard. So again, always check your areas. If you are uncomfortable with the fact that it requires you to dig up the ground and like disturb the natural areas, this is really one of the only ways we're able to survey a large state park. You're checking it every day to make sure the animals are okay, and scientific data and research when it comes to these things are not always being done. So we don't know about all these animals and where they are. The first step is knowing where they are, and this is a way to do that, especially if you're part of a research team. It's not as harmful as you may think. So when these traps are not in use, the lids should be tucked. The lids should be on tightly so nothing can get in whenever you're not going back to check it. This method is a great way to survey for a variety of different animals, but especially for reptiles and amphibians as well. I hope that you guys get out there, you find what method you like the best, and I hope that you enjoyed this video, it taught you something, and I hope you get out there and start herping. So thanks for checking out the video. I will see you guys next time. Let me know what other videos you'd like to see, and thanks for stopping by and watching.